In this video I will show you how to build a custom painting in Minecraft. You might think, how do you transform an image into a custom Minecraft painting? You could try and place blocks in a certain pattern on your wall. Only problem is, this will take up a lot of space and in most cases make things look quite ugly. Alternatively, you could try and replace your texture pack folder and put in a custom design, but this only works for people using that texture pack. My way of making a custom painting will solve both these problems, but does require a little more work. This is the map I'll be making today as an example. As you can see, this looks like one of the normal Minecraft paintings, except for the anime and the fact it actually has more detail than the normal paintings. So you got two options here. One is using Photoshop. This method makes things a little more easy and makes the maps themselves look better and less pixeled. You also have more control over your end result. The other option is using an online tool that does the brunt of the work for you, but this is based on an algorithm that generally doesn't do as good of a job as assigning colors to the individual pixels. But more on that later. I have timestamps in the description and as title cards in this video for each option. If you do not want a detailed tutorial and you just want to see the build process and how I made the map, you can skip forward to the time-lapse section of the video. So if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm building 8x8 chunks worth of blocks that overlay with a design I created in Photoshop. This can also be done with an online tool like I said before. If you have a private server, the easier option here is transforming the image using a tool, then download it as a map file and place it into your server's map folder. This will replace the map data of the existing map with the image you copied over. This is how most YouTubers get pictures into Minecraft, but they use a plugin for it. And yes, it is easier to download that plugin than actually create the map yourself. Before you start building anything and try and design a map, be sure if you don't own the server yourself to ask the owner if he can include this plugin into the server. This will save you a lot of trouble and work and makes things generally a lot easier, although the end product will not look as good, but it will save you a lot of trouble. Let's start off with option 1. Open up your Photoshop. I'm using Adobe Photoshop. Then find the image you want to put into Minecraft. A cartoonish or painted picture will work better for this because of the black lines around each individual object, thing, body part or whatever. Now you make sure you select a square on your image. The bottom right screen should display two equal numbers. This is so that when you convert it to 128 by 128, the whole picture will be filled with your original picture. Now that you have your square selected, open up a new file. In Adobe Photoshop, it will automatically put the pixels as the selected square. This makes things a lot easier and you can just open up a new file, press Ctrl V, it will be there. After that, you're gonna go to Image, Image Size and convert the image to 128 by 128. Make sure your units are not in anything like centimeters or inches, just make sure they're in pixels. Now you see a rough pixelated image of your original. Don't be afraid, we will fix this. Now go to the Minecraft wiki, I have put the link in the description, and make sure you download the color palette that's on there. I will also leave a link to that if you can't find it on the wiki. These palettes are all the possible colors you can put onto a map in Minecraft. You will need this for the coloring process. Either open this up or import it into your Photoshop program. Just make sure you can select the colors on the palette and use them on your image of choosing. I suggest making a new layer and dragging it above your normal image. You can see how I do this in Photoshop here. You will then paint on this layer and not on the original picture itself. This will make sure that you can still see the original and your version of it. So you're basically just tracing the image but with the colors on your palette. Now your first step will be to retrace the black lines if there are any. If you use the real life photo, this will be a lot harder and you will have to do it with solid colors and shadows. I personally don't do this very often, or not at all to be honest, and I just used cartoon or anime pictures. So you want to go over each black line and color it in with the black line on your palette. You can see how I do this here. It's not hard, it's just retracing a couple of lines. It's like what you do in kindergarten. It's really easy, trust me. Now once this is done, like you see here, you can move on to the next step. This step will be coloring in the actual image, and this doesn't require a lot of skill. Like I said, it's just retracing the original image and filling up spaces with the solid color you're choosing for that section of your image. But the amount of work you want to put into this or the level of detail totally depends on you, and you don't need a lot of skill for the bare basics. So if you don't want to do a lot of work, just stick with me. Otherwise, try and experiment a bit and see what looks good. Make sure you select the color that most closely represents your original color. Also make sure you select the middle shade of the color wherever possible. This will help you in the building process. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of time. But if you really need to, you can use these shades, although keep in mind this will require a lot more work later on in the video. And I will explain why and how in the building process. So now your image will look something like this. If you're happy and the image is completely filled up with colors from the palette, you're good to go. But I do suggest downloading my chunk overlay to make things a little simpler and easier to build. The link is in the description. I'll explain this later on. Option 2, using an online map generator tool. Get your image and put it in this tool. It will spit out an image that looks something like it, but in 128 by 128, and it looks more pixelated and, well, grainy than your original picture. This is because the algorithm compresses your original image into 128 by 128 pixels and then assigns the closest Minecraft color to this. This is due to half pixels not being a thing. You can see here what I mean by half pixels not being a thing. Instead of assigning a solid color to it, what it does is it assigns half of the black line and half of the gray blue. So this will not represent your original image as much, and the algorithm doesn't take this into account and will just assign the most closely related color to the original. This will create some weird lighter blocks in the middle of your image that shouldn't be there, or darker edges than there should be. If you do not want this, consider using option 1. This will make it look a lot less pixelated and removes the weird colors a bit. Happy with the image you got back? Download the image and open it up in any photo viewing program. Or in case of this specific site, you don't have to download the image, you can use their online bitmap. This will simplify things a little bit. Due to the creation of the bitmap being done by an algorithm, you might get a really hard map or a really easy map. This is totally dependent on your original image, although this will matter in the building process and can make things a lot more difficult. So, before we start building, I gotta teach you some basic map art theory. So I'll start off by explaining how the palette works, which you downloaded if you chose option 1. If you haven't, the palette will be up on the screen. These are all the possible map colors, so these are the only colors that can and will be displayed on your custom map, painting or poster. For each color there's a lighter shade and a darker shade. These shades on a normal map are there to represent height. So you might ask, will this give me 2 times the amount of colors? Yes, but this is a trade-off. Using shades results in more work. This is because you have to build in the 3rd dimension or on the y-axis. This is called staircasing. This is basically just building a staircase. You can see that here. Staircasing can be done by building up or down. Up or positive staircasing will result in a lighter shade. Down or negative staircasing is a darker shade. So you can visualize it as blocks casting a shadow on the one below, or with positive staircasing the blocks get more light and will show up as a lighter shade. I suggest for your first map to keep it simple. Quick note, the color black lacks any shades. Use this as staircase pauses, so you can start again from your lowest or highest points, depending on which way you're staircasing. So to sum this whole thing up, middle shade easy, other shades hard. For people using option 2, if you didn't see my text bubble on the screen, the tool lets you select if you want to staircase or not. This will simplify things a bit and will generate your bitmap as flat. Also, there are a couple more options, but use them at your own discretion. Do keep in mind, staircasing is dependent on where you're facing. For example, staircasing up to the west will not result in shades, but if you staircase up towards the south, you will see a lighter color. Keep in mind, this is direction dependent. On top of all that, for each color, let's take for example red, there's a list of blocks that will show up as red. Red concrete, red wool, red shroom blocks, netherwart blocks, and many more. So you will have to think about which blocks you're going to use and what blocks are the easiest to collect or craft. If you're using option 2, you can just select all the blocks you'd be okay with collecting. Now, onto chunks. Chunks. You might have heard of these before. Chunks can be viewed using F3 plus G. Chunks are used for rendering and many more harder to understand purposes. Chunks are determined when first loading your world. Chunks are 16 by 16 blocks. What does this have to do with my map/poster or painting? Well, dear viewer, maps consist of 8 by 8 chunks. The map layout is also determined on first loading your world. This is so every bit of your Minecraft world can be mapped, and you don't have a void that is unmappable. But the same system can be used to your advantage. This involves the chunk overlay you downloaded, for people using option 1 that is, and the box you can check for people using option 2. So you can see the chunks and they are marked on your image. Now what? If you press F3 plus G while building, you can use these borders and the ones on your image to verify you've placed your blocks correctly. For people using my overlay, it shows chunks of 15 by 15, due to the outer ring being the overlay. Just use the layer visibility icon for these blocks. I call this chunk bordering, and this saves you a lot of trouble and double checking. One more thing, I suggest finding a big open space and using an empty map to map out and see the dimensions of your build zone. I suggest marking these like this before you start building, to make sure you're starting in the right position. If you are using staircasing, start building about 30 blocks above the highest point in your build zone. Now that we're done with the block map theory masterclass, you can start building. And fill up every block in your marked 8 by 8 zone with the blocks corresponding to the image pixels, with or without staircasing depending on what you decided to do. The building process with fly and without gathering took me about 5 or 6 hours on an easy map. So that's the map I'm showing off in this video. For a full survival world this will take you way longer, but I'd argue these custom paintings / posters look 10 times better than copying one in with a plugin and are cool items to give out to friends. So having explained all that, here's how I built my custom poster. Of course I will timelapse this for you. Commence the timelapse. And here's the finished result, like I showed off earlier. Cool, right? But what if I told you I already made several of these? Well, here they are. Many people on the server I played on really like Pocket, but I'd argue the blue starry sky one, the one with the blue starry sky, is best. Of course, this is all your personal opinion, but blue starry sky is way superior, I'm sorry. Like you can see, these are perfect to hang in your Minecraft home, as they only take up one block and makes the place look way more vibrant. As you can see in this video, you can build whatever you want on these maps and display them on your wall. You can even, if you really want to put in some extra effort, put 2 maps together and make them overlap, or even 4 to make even a bigger portrait. I hope you took something away from this video. I know this might seem like a mountain of work, but if you do still attempt this, please join my Discord and show me the finished product. I'd really love to see them. I love making these maps and I hope you do too. And that's all for today. This video took me way longer to make than I wanted, but here it is. A masterclass to map making. If you did enjoy this, you might want to consider subscribing. I'll be doing another Minecraft video soon. This will be one where I do a challenge run and I promise you it'll be worth it. Here's a little sneak peek from the challenge run. Bye!